Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll start on this beautiful Scottsdale morning. Welcome to Scottsdale's annual Founders Day celebration. I'm Joan Fadala, Scottsdale Community Historian, and it's so great to be celebrating another Winfield Scott and Founders Day birthday celebration. As many of you know, we do this in the shadow of the Scottsdale Grammar School, which Winfield and Helen Scott helped dedicate on this very date, February 26, 1910. And also, just behind us, kind of through the tents over there, the wonderful sculpture commemorating the Scotts done by Georgianne Tognani, where we honor Winfield Scott and Helen, who's astride Old Maud, their beloved mule. And speaking of Old Maud, we always try to pick a theme appropriate for the Scotts every year. And this year we're theming our event Scottsdale, the Scotts as our very first equestrians and the people in Scottsdale that really helped establish our horse culture in Scottsdale. So as I mentioned, Scottsdale observes Founders Day every year on this date, February 26, which was the day that Winfield Scott was born in Michigan in 1837, which makes him 189 years old today. And we'll be hearing from his likeness in a few minutes. But together, he and his wife Helen homesteaded the first property in Scottsdale in 1888, and they sowed the seeds for so many of our wonderful traditions and institutions in Scottsdale. They were role models of community service. And something that we also would hope that they would be so proud of is that this is Scottsdale's 75th year of an anniversary of incorporation. We incorporated in June 1951. So instead of waiting until the really hot days of summer to hold a one-day celebration, the city and the community is having a number of events, including this one, that will help us celebrate the 75 years that we've been an official city. Again, thanks to the start that Winfield and Helen Scott gave us. So before we start some of our talks, I want to introduce a few individuals and thank them for all that they've done for our community and for Scottsdale. We have members of council here, Jan DeBoscus and Marianne McAllen and Solange Whitehead. Great, you just slipped in. Thank you for being here. And we have two very significant former council people, Don Pryor and David Smith. And I'm so happy to say that both of these esteemed gentlemen are being inducted into Scottsdale's History Hall of Fame later this year in May. So again, thank you so much for all that you've done for Scottsdale. And of course, we'll be seeing our mayor in just a few minutes. She's on her way. Also, a group that I want to give a shout out to were the Friends of Winfield Scott, who began this annual celebration decades ago under the leadership of Roberta Pilcher, who was later a city council person. In fact, she got on city council by the most unique way ever. Who remembers that her name was drawn out of a cowboy hat to fill a vacant council seat? And of course, we couldn't have this day without the wonderful participation of the Winfield Scott chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, who we definitely want to give a thanks to, and who are providing today's refreshments. And I want to thank all of the volunteers, past and present, of the Scottsdale Historical Society, currently led by President Jason Song. They've kept alive the stories of Winfield and Helen Scott and all of the wonderful stories and legend and lore and photos and artifacts of Scottsdale, particularly located in our wonderful Scottsdale Historical Museum. So now let me talk a few minutes about Scotts as our first equestrians. You know, obviously, many of you know that Scottsdale history is full of everything equine. And I say equine because it isn't just horses, but we have Old Maud, a famous mule, and we've had other famous mules here in Scottsdale as well. After all, you can't be the westmost western town without having a lot of horse history. So again, Scottsdale's first beloved equine was actually a retired U.S. Army mule. Chaplain Winfield Scott, when he retired from the Army from Fort Huachuca to come and live on their homestead here, brought with him an Army mule who had seen service in the Mexican Wars and actually had a wound in one of her legs. The mule became known, of course, as Old Maud, and became the town mascot, giving gentle rides to many of the school children. And Old Maud was memorialized in the very first oil painting done by our very first artist, Marjorie Thomas. And also, the sculpture here, of course, then was dedicated decades later, memorializing Old Maud along with Helen and Winfield. But did you know that our horse history goes way farther back? When they were excavating McCormick Lake along Scottsdale Road during the development of McCormick Ranch, the excavators actually found prehistoric horse bones as well as woolly mammoth fossilized bones when they were excavating the lake. So our horse history goes back well over 10,000 years. So again, we definitely earned the right to be called an equestrian community. During Scottsdale's first decades as an agricultural economy, horses, of course, were a vital part of ranch and farm life, powering equipment and providing transportation. And horsepower, of course, was essential to dig the Arizona Canal, which provided the water for Scottsdale's farms and ranches. One of our first businesses that still stands on the corner of 2nd Street and Brown, Cavalier's Blacksmith Shop, certainly began to, in 1910, to service the horses and the horse-powered equipment that ran the farms and ranches in Scottsdale. But then fast forward to the time after World War II when we experienced a big tourism and residential boom. The Scottsdale Chamber, along with our first mayor, coined the phrase Scottsdale, the westmost western town, and really paid homage to everything that had to do with horses. The chamber started sponsoring a horse rodeo in the winter. And also in 1951, along with the Scottsdale Riding Club, the chamber started a little horse-drawn parade called the Sunshine Festival, which a few years later, when being adopted by the Scottsdale JCs, became our beloved Parada del Sol Parade. A few years later, they added a rodeo on grounds that are located now where Scottsdale Fashion Square is. And of course, horses played a big part in that rodeo and still do today at the rodeo held at Westworld. In fact, an internationally known trick rider was based here in Scottsdale and traveled the entire rodeo circuit. His name was Dick Griffith, and he could be astride 2 horses at the same time, a foot on each, and jump over his 1950s Cadillac in front of the rodeo crowds. And when he wasn't dazzling the fans by jumping over cars on his horses, he had a ranch near Cattle Track and gave horseback riding lessons. During the years, maybe you didn't know this, after World War II, after the cadet training facility closed, Thunderbird II Airfield, Arizona State College took it over as a technical trade school. And also because I had all that land available, they built an intercollegiate rodeo grounds there and had rodeos with other colleges. And in fact, a future mayor by the name of Bill Schrader was one of the competitors, the competition guys on horseback on a bucking bronco during one of those intercollegiate rodeos, was bucked off and broke his collarbone. But as we all know, he went on to become our mayor, a council person, and longtime president of SRP, so he survived. The Tweeds of Brusali Ranch and Ann McCormick were instrumental in bringing the year-old All-Arabian Horse Show to Scottsdale after it started at the Wrigley's in 1955. It's been in the Scottsdale area since 1956 and is a beloved February event here. And again has traveled around a bit, but has been home-based at Westworld since 1989. And from World War II onward, Scottsdale has become a world-renowned center for raising and breeding Arabian horses, with so many wonderful ranches, names like the Tweeds, Brusali Ranch, and McCormick Ranch, Cheney Ranch, Chauncey Ranch, Lasma, and so many others. That many of those still thrive along the Cactus Corridor. And of course, Los Cedros on North Pima Road is quite a showplace that still houses and takes care of Arabian horses. Polo, another horse event, has seen a revival in Scottsdale in the past 15 years with the annual championship held at Westworld. But actually, polo in the Scottsdale area dates back to the 1920s when the Valley Field Polo and Riding Club was established and now is on the National Register of Historic Places. And when Westworld officially opened in 1987, it hosted a Scottsdale polo team called the Scottsdale Thunder. During the 1950s and 60s, Yale Simonoff and his wife Fern operated not only the Arizona stables, but opened the Horse Country Club of Scottsdale, and I think we're going to hear about that in a few minutes as well. As residential and commercial areas began to replace Scottsdale's wide open spaces, the city wanted to be sure that equestrians still had a place to ride and show their horses. So in the early 1970s, they established Desert Park, which was later renamed Cholla Park, at the very north end of the Scottsdale Airport runway. The equestrian park had to close about 10 years later when we got permission to extend the runway north. And so the city was looking for a place to replace the equestrian park. And that same year, 1982, the city entered into an agreement with the entered a recreational land use agreement with the Bureau of Reclamation of the federal government to establish a recreational area specifically dedicated to equestrians. And that began the development of what was first known as Horseman's Park, and then eventually was renamed Westworld. And then the city began developing equestrian facilities, not only to hold events, but also to accommodate the many equestrians in Scottsdale. And then in 2013, with the opening of the fully enclosed Tony Nelson Equestrian Center, we have a year-round climate-controlled facility that hosts any number of equestrian facilities as well as other special events. So Marjorie Thomas, as one of our first artists who specialized in doing paintings of the horses and mules in Scottsdale, started a culture that continued with, again, Georgianne Tognani, that not only did the Scott sculpture, but in this direction, our beloved yearlings, which are at the entry of the west side of Civic Center. Local artist Snellen Johnson was the one that created that wonderful bronze horse sculpture at the entrance to Westworld. And then that horse sculpture was joined in 2014 by Jeff Ziskey's Impulsion sculpture that is near the Tony Nelson Equestrian Facility at Westworld. Herb Minery's sculpture, Passing the Legacy, was dedicated in 2008 at the Scottsdale waterfront and pays homage to the reenactment annually of the Pony Express Ride, which is a tradition during Parada del Sol weekend. And perhaps one of the most innovative pieces of horse art in Scottsdale is called Watermark, and those are the 5 aluminum horses along Indian Bend Road that during a big heavy rainstorm, the water comes down the wash through the hollow aluminum horses, and the water spews out their mouths. So if you're ever along Indian Bend Road during a big rainstorm, it'll be a real treat, a rare treat for you to see those in action. Again, so many parts of our lifestyle in Scottsdale involves horses. The Scottsdale Police Department has an equestrian unit. The vintage carousel at the McCormick Railroad Park gives children the opportunity to ride on a horse no matter what time of the year it is. And of course, equestrians enjoy the many trails in the McDowell-Sonoran Preserve. So just look around. Horses are just so Scottsdale, and we owe it all to Helen and Winfield Scott, who started our equestrian atmosphere here in Scottsdale. So I hope that, there she is. As a Scottsdale historian, I have to look at all kinds of themes and topics in Scottsdale history, but that doesn't mean that I'm an expert in any of them. But now we have a wonderful expert who's spent a lifetime as an equestrian here in Scottsdale, and that's our very own mayor, Lisa Borowski. So I ask her to give you a few of her memories of growing up among the horse community in Scottsdale and then presenting a proclamation. Thank you so much, Mayor Borowski.
Joan, great to see you. Good morning. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased to be here. And in the words of Joan Fadala, I will echo her sentiments. Horses are so Scottsdale. I couldn't agree with her more. So that's certainly what kept me and my family here, I would say. We grew up, first it's wonderful to be here and celebrating Founders Day here in Old Town. And for me, this event is very personal. This day is very personal. As Joan said, I grew up here, and horses were such a big part of my life. I remember when my sister and I, when we first moved to Scottsdale proper, we lived on 5 acres, and our neighbors had retired racehorses. So we couldn't have been happier. I think we were 5 and 6 years old, my sister and I. And so we would watch the horses, try to pet the horses, and dream of the day that we might have a horse of our own. So we had all those, as all the girls do, have the miniature horse stalls, right? And we would stay up until far too late at night, getting in trouble with a flashlight on our notebook, coming up with names for horses. So that was really a passion from the time I was very, very little. And as Joan outlined, Scottsdale was just such a big horse environment. And we were blessed. Surprisingly, my dad actually, when we were 7 and 8 years old, ordered a horse, and there was no online. So this is really kind of a cool story. We, like I said, lived on 5 acres, and I remember the big commercial rig pulling up to our, looked like a moving van, and out backed a horse, a big jet black horse named Malachi. And it was fresh off the racetrack, which for anyone that knows anything about horses, you don't buy a retired racehorse that you've never met before for your 7 and 8 year old daughters, right? So, meanwhile, so that was an interesting experience. We didn't ride Malachi, luckily, and we did end up getting a second horse from the barn behind us, and her name was Lillimore, and we were just really green, and that's certainly a horse term, but we had no idea what we were doing, but we had a passion. And so when things got a little rocky with Lillimore and Malachi, my dad and my mom decided to get us into horse riding lessons. And I heard Joan talking about the Seminoffs, and they were icons back in the day. So we started horseback riding lessons with the Seminoffs. And it was like a secondary school. It was like a secondary education. And all the kids rode with Seminoffs. So they had this big, almost like a camp. We were there 3 days a week. twice on the weekends and showed when we could almost every other, at least 2-4 times a month. And it was a full-time job, and it was a responsibility builder. There's nothing like having a 1,000-pound animal that you have to take care of. That comes along with all the things that you need to do for a horse. Shovel manure, brush the horse, wash the horse, braid their tail, shine the saddle, take care of the leather. So it was really just an incredible experience. And getting back to Yale and Fern, your parents didn't have to be disciplinarians, because Yale and Fern Seminoff, they were the old school trainers. You were going to toe the line. You were going to work very, very hard, and you were going to win. So that was what I was surrounded with growing up. And there's no better experience, and there's no better place to do childhood than Scottsdale, Arizona. And I'm just so thrilled because Joan also mentioned the TNEC, Tony Nelson Equestrian Center. And, having grown up here and seeing all the expansion, all the ranches have been taken out, right? Gainey, McCormick, Cheney, Horseman's Park, we've had some evolution and betterment in the ranches for sure, but they're further out. We're blessed to have Westworld, which I'm pleased to say we listened to the strategic plan and the plans for moving forward for Westworld, and Westworld is really on fire. We are doing so well. The economic driver that Westworld is incredible, and we heard a full report about how that's accurate and how we can continue to grow the brand of Westworld and the brand of Scottsdale in turn. And so that's exciting that we're reinvesting in the equestrian lifestyle and what really has put us on the map as the most western town. And as mayor, that's been a priority for me from day one, well, from back when I was 7, actually, as it turns out. So you can certainly count on this administration and the council to, and of course, the city manager's office to continue to reinvest in what has made Scottsdale great. And that is, to a large extent, the equestrian lifestyle and the most western approach to doing life. So with that, I'm thrilled to be here and celebrate Founders Day. It's such a great tradition that we have. Thank you to the Historical Society for carrying this forward and always making it a meaningful event here on our 75th anniversary, right? Very excited about that. So without further ado, I have a proclamation I would like to present. I think Jason Song is president of the Historical Society, who's going to accept that. And we really appreciate all your hard work. I know Joan went over much of the material, but in closing, I'd like to say congratulations and keep up the great work. And Scottsdale recognizes Chaplain Winfield and Helen Scott as our community's first equestrians, founders, and namesakes. And I do present to you this proclamation today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, good job. I'll bring Joan Fidala back up. Thank you so much. Thank you, of course.
I told you, it's wonderful to hear from an expert. And I couldn't be so snarky to say straight from the horse's mouth, right? Don't throw anything at me, Lisa. So what would a birthday party be without the birthday boy himself? Here to offer a few observations about horses in his life and a few other things, none other than our own Chaplain Winfield Scott. Winnie, take it away.
Well, thank you. My legs really was hurting me this morning, and when I got here, I ran into that nice young man, Gary Shapiro, and he said to me, you should quote that American sage Leslie Gore who sang, "It's my party and I can cry if I want to." Gary, you'll have to explain why that's funny at some point to me. Well, I'm so happy you're all here at my birthday. I even got a birthday gift. A gentleman over there named Tom, he gave me a 1888 silver dollar to commemorate the year that Helen and I bought the land that became Scottsdale. If you'd like to see it, it's in my pocket. Now, I get a lot of credit for founding Scottsdale, but Helen really deserves a lion's share of the credit. She was an incredible woman. While I was out gallivanting around at the territorial legislature, the Arizona Board of Regents, when I was out being the chancellor of the University of Arizona, Helen was here in Scottsdale, where we had at the time no running water, no flush toilets, and no electricity. And I was at places that had all those things. Who's the real pioneer? She was here in the summer, and she spent time doing things. She was a very big community advocate. She was also a poet. And I understand there's a young man who partnered up with Joan here. I've never seen him. I've been here 5 years now. I never see this guy. He never shows up. His name is Bruce something. But this guy partnered up with Joan, and they made a booklet they reprinted the booklet of Helen's poetry. I'd like to share with you one of my wife's poems. It's called Arbor Day at Scottsdale, 1898. There stands in the grounds of old St. Mark a sundial, quaint and gray. It takes no heed of the hours in the dark that passes over it day by day. It has stood for ages among the flowers in the land of story and song. I number none but the cloudless hours, its motto all day long. So maybe we plant this Arbor Day in the playground of life, a calendar cheerfully keep. Take no note or sorrow or strife, else their shadows in the after we may reap when we have forgotten this Arbor Day. Now, if you'd like a copy of this, it's over there at one of those tables. You can get a copy. It hasn't been seen around in Scottsdale for about 20 years. And speaking of things that haven't been seen around in Scottsdale in a while, so in 1909, Marjorie Thomas moved here, and she was our first artist in residence, and she wanted to get some work. So I hired her to paint my mule, Old Maud, that mule that's in bronze just over there. That picture hasn't been seen in over 10 years in public. It's right now in the Historical Museum. So I'll make this offer to you after we're done with this presentation today. I'll walk over there, and if you'd like, you can get a picture of yourself with Winfield, and with Old Maud in the photo. And I'll stay there till everyone gets a photo that they'd like. And in closing, I'd like to say something about Old Maud. So after my death in 1910, Old Maud stayed here on the farm. And let's say you were in Old Town and you needed to ride over to, say, Thomas and Hayden Road, and you didn't have a horse for yourself. Well, Old Maud was just sitting there, wasn't doing anything, so you'd hop on Old Maud and you'd ride over to Thomas and Hayden, and then you'd tie it up there and leave it there. And then someone over there would need to get over to McDowell and Scottsdale Road. So they jump on Old Maud and they ride over, and Old Maud, just great old mule, let you go, take her over there. And then someone would take her down into Old Town. At the end of the day, Old Maud would return back to the paddock over at Indian School and Scottsdale Road. So you might say Old Maud was our first Uber. Well, I'd like to thank you all for coming to my birthday. Happy 189th birthday to me. And I know thank you. Someone posted something, it said, he doesn't look a day over 150, and I take that as a compliment. Thank you all very much.
Wow. I hope I look that good when I'm 189. No chance. We can never have enough gratitude expressed to a former historian of Scottsdale, Dick Lynch, who in the 1970s did copious amounts of research and gave us the, quote, Bible, unquote, of the history and life of Winfield Scott. And so much of what Winfield, our mutual friend Bruce, myself, and so many of the historic people in the audience have relied on this book to know a lot more about not only Winfield Scott, but our community in general. So again, be sure and pick up a copy of, it's called Half Mast. You have to say that really carefully. And Other Poems. Helen's book is available free over at the city table. It's truly a keeper. There are also stickers and other commemorative pieces about our 75th anniversary, bookmarks and other things that you can pick up at the city table over there. Be sure and see the old Maud portrait inside the schoolhouse. And also, really important, as part of the 75th anniversary, thanks to the Scottsdale Artist School, Trudy Hayes and Sandra Zally, we have a horse named Sonora, which is made out of wire, and it is meant to have hundreds and hundreds of ribbons that each of you sign and maybe even squeeze a little written memory on and then tie it onto the wire. And by the end of our anniversary year, that kind of sparse piece of wire is going to look like a huge, fluffy, fully maned horse. So please participate and give Sonora your best memories and your best wishes during this, our 75th anniversary year. Again, thank you so much to the DAR for your participation and your refreshments. Shout out to the graphic design team at the City of Scottsdale and the Community Engagement and Citizen Services for helping put on this event. And again, there are so many other opportunities to celebrate Scottsdale history just about any time during the year here in Scottsdale. Always come to see the Scottsdale Historical Society exhibits, browse the books and publications in the Scottsdale Heritage Connection Messenger Family Research Room at the Civic Center Library, or go online and enjoy over 11,000 images and documents that are located on the Scottsdale Library's website, all about Scottsdale history. Visit Western Spirits, Scottsdale's Museum of the West, for all of its displays, and tour the historic trains and depots at the McCormick-Stillman Railroad Park, as well as the wonderful World War II aviation cadet display at Scottsdale Airport, and many other historic sites in Scottsdale, Taliesin and others. So again, savor Scottsdale history, but always remember, if it weren't for Winfield and Helen Scott, we wouldn't be enjoying such a beautiful day in Scottsdale. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you